Welcome to Page of Apocalypse, a chronicling of every chapter of the 90s X-Men comic book event of biblical proportions, the Age of Apocalypse. I'm your co-host, the ever uncanny, ever astonishing Spider-Dan, and I'm joined by my Comics in Motion compatriots, a genetic freak who would never go back in time and get freaky with his own mum, Max Byrne, and
you say that.
Let's not write it off completely.
Off to a great start. And also Dave Horrocks, who he himself was too busy being a weapons sex machine in the 90s to read any comics.
Yeah,
he was. You admitted as much on the last podcast,
Yeah, machine is a bit much, but I do appreciate the intros. Though I think because Max is on, you bring in your A game clearly.
Absolutely, you're good with the synopses. Max is great with the introductions, so I'm trying to live up. I surround myself with my betters, sir. So we are back finally after long last. We're back. And we're getting stuck in like adamantium claws into someone's gut with the rest of the Age of Apocalypse. And we're starting with Weapon X, the Wolverine series, written by Larry Hama of G.I. Joe fame, and art by Andy Kubert. I want to say, is it Andy or is it Adam? I'm forgetting now. I'm going to say Andy.
I think it's Andy.
Off the top of my head. Yeah, we'll go with Andy, who is the son of classic artist Joe Kubert, who is famous for Sergeant Rock and Hawkman, among many other wonderful comic books as well. So here we are. We have this has been voted. This is the first vote or second. Was it second? No, first vote we did on my Patreon, and they decided that Weapon X, Wolverine, we should go whole hog into that. The most popular of all the X-Men, and in a way, I'm kind of glad that we're getting this over and done with because I like Wolverine, but sometimes I think he's a very much an overexposed character. But I think we should rock and roll on. And Dave, as you are the king of the synopses, why don't you give us a brief synopsis of Weapon X 1995?
Well, I thought I would do it in the style of the trailer guy.
Ooh.
So we're gonna kind of need some background music, but maybe we could do that in post.
Sure.
In a world ruled by darkness, Apocalypse has seized control, crushing humanity beneath his iron fist. The X-Men are scattered, the war all but lost. In the heart of the chaos, two warriors fight for the last flicker of hope, one with unbreakable claws, the other with unshakable conscience. Logan, now Weapon X, is the deadliest weapon in the human resistance, cutting down Apocalypse's enforcers with savage precision. Jean Grey stands at his side, her power matched only by her conviction. Together, they strike from the shadows, their mission clear: stop Apocalypse at any cost. As war looms and loyalties are tested, one question remains: how far will they go to save the world already lost? That was the next page. Weapon X. When the future is gone, only the strongest survive. So there you go. That is
yes,
my,
very nice.
Guy.
Excellent.
Very, very nice.
Excellent.
That was very excellent. This is why we asked for it. Look, he came. He wasn't prepared. I didn't tell him to do this, but he was ready and raring to go. And what a read that was! Fantastic.
Preparation is key.
You should have been an actor, Dave, not me. But yeah. Yes, what an interesting book as well. We'll get into it, and I'm going to go over to Max Byrne again, my favourite genetic freak, gene freak, if you will, to quote the X-Men and the villains that usually insult them with their various slurs. Yes, we love you, Max. But Max, I know you're a huge Wolverine fan, so what did you think to Weapon X, and how different is this version of Wolverine, Jean Grey, and the other various characters that we see in this version of that universe?
I don't think Wolverine's massively different from the Wolverine you would expect to see, really. Obviously, his appearance is very different. He's got this magnificent it's like a lion's mane he's got in this. It really is impressive, and they did a wonderful job of putting that into live action. Didn't they? Hugh Jackman's little appearance in Deadpool and Wolverine, that on screen for about 5 seconds, if that, but it was very comic accurate. But no, I think it's good fun. I mean, it's a 4-issue action-packed globe-trotting romp. It's not massive on nuance. It's not massive on plot, but it is massive on action. It's got everything you want in a Wolverine story, blood and guts and lots of people getting killed left, right, and centre. It's good fun at the end of the day. It doesn't waste time with niceties in the storytelling. It gets right into it.
Oh, absolutely.
I think you'd be hard pressed not to like it. I mean, it's not a classic tale by any stretch of the imagination, and I completely agree with you, Dan, as well. I think Wolverine is dramatically overexposed, certainly these days. Anyway,
definitely.
And sometimes my eyes can gloss over a bit in a Wolverine story. But there's enough here to keep you entertained. I think 4 issues is just the ideal amount. I think if they'd extended it any longer, I think it would have been like, oh, for God's sake. But I think just keeping it to 4, it keeps the story reasonably tight, I think,
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I think I don't think it's perfect, but I did get a lot of enjoyment out of it. And I'm sure we'll go into the imperfections I have with it. But I think if you're looking for a fun Wolverine tale, which is a little bit different or kind of shades of something else, then you can find it here. And again, I think we get a lot of world building as well. We get a lot more characters kind of introduced. We'll talk about one of them in particular, which I think has a good introduction, but maybe has a poor ending towards it. The way they kind of exit the thing, or quite entertaining might be anyway. But yeah, it kind of grows this world, and we see the progression, and we also see all the events that are happening. This is why I said we could kind of read them out of order, because all of these events are being referenced in other books that are happening at the same time. So that's why I gave people the option for the Patreon to pick which one they want to here first, because all these events are happening at the exact same time and going, oh, Mikhail Rasputin isn't here, he's off in X universe, and this giant airlift, this great airlift is in Amazing or Astonishing X-Men, go and check that out. So again, you're seeing kind of those little elements that filter through, and these characters come and kind of make their stamp on this universe as well. But yeah, Dave, what did you think to Weapon X?
Yeah, it was a good story, nice simple story. I mean, so far-fetched in some ways, isn't it, that you'd have this authoritarian United States government which needs to be taken out. Absolutely. Seems bonkers, really. It would never happen.
What? But X-Men being topical again?
Yeah.
Never.
Too damn woke.
It's just fun. It's just mutants. They don't represent anything. Sure.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, I am a massive Wolverine fan, but I don't know. I know this miniseries is held up in high regard, but I'm reading it, and I know I talked about it last time. Such a Claremontian fanboy. However, I almost look at this and I see this is where he started to become Wolverine Superman, where he's just invincible and there's nothing really other than, he might get a bit sad at times, but physically there's nothing that can touch him. There's one of the panels he's going straight through molten lava and he just sort of shakes it off a bit, and I'm sure we'll talk about when him and Jean part, and he ends up sizzled, but then he's pretty much okay, soon after. So, and apart from the hand, of course, which is a nice Chekhov's gun for what we see later.
Yes.
But yeah, I think I enjoyed it without loving it, I would say. And that's because I like when Wolverine actually had there was some consequence to what he did. He could be hurt. He could be put out of action for some time. And I think this alternate character has probably had an influence over the 616 Wolverine as well. So, but yeah, I mean, brutal world. And at the time, we'd have probably been referencing back, say, this is very much like Nazi Germany, isn't it? Let's see in 10 years' time how that goes.
Well, yeah, and again, it's the like both sides of the pond are kind of almost at war and kind of having some,
It's not much about Greenland, was there? But I think they missed a trick there.
Yes, I think I agree with you to some degree, Dave. I think the design and the character itself is probably better remembered than this particular miniseries. I don't think what happens here is like super iconic or anything. I think there's some great. I love the artwork. It's the good side of the extreme 90s art. It's very detailed. It's very expressive, very emotive, very extreme. But it works for me. It has character. It has those kind of moments like we talked about last time with the pathos, especially Jean and Wolverine and their kind of Casablanca-esque parting that they have, which I think is good. I think a thing that was interesting to me is like Wolverine and Jean being together has always been a thing for me where I'm kind of like, I think at best you get, the Casablanca thing where they can't be together for whatever reason, even though they deeply love each other and care for each other. It's just not right. It wouldn't work, even though they both want it and need it. At the opposite end of that, I think you can veer into like creepy old man territory a little bit with Wolverine.
Wolverine, creepy old man? Never.
Creepy old man? Never. Who? What?
Oh no, the opposite. Always.
Yeah. But I think that's the thing with Chris Claremont as well, because he stopped doing that in the comics. They stopped doing that in the cartoon. I mean, in X-Men '97, there's kind of little hints to it and stuff, but it's never like overtly like I'm stalking you or it's creepy or it's weird. He still has some kind of moments in that show, but I think by about series 3 or 4, it's kind of like forgotten about. Chris Claremont would introduce Lady Mariko, who's in this book as well, a version of this. Speaking of creepy old men, we'll talk about that in a moment. And I think that's the reason, because there's only so long you can do. It reminds me of that, have you seen The Wedding Singer with Adam Sandler?
Yeah.
I watched that on Saturday. Literally, just 2 days ago.
Right. Well, I'm going to remind you of something you've seen very recently. There's the older friend he has when he talks about like the Fonz, and he says, when you get to a certain age, people don't want to see a 30, 40-year-old guy hitting on young girls, and I think there was a thing in like X-Men Evolution where Wolverine was basically the same age, but they made Jean a lot younger, and I think that was probably a good thing for me. So I don't mind Jean and Wolverine to a degree. I kind of, I like the kind of, the conflict there and Cyclops and everything, but I don't think I ever really want to see them together necessarily. And I think this comic shows why that doesn't or wouldn't work anyway. I do think the Wolverine here is much bleaker than, it's not far, like Max said, removed from what we've had previously in the depiction of Wolverine, but he's much more bleaker in his worldview. Like, he's like, bomb them all, nuke North America entirely. He's like, let's go for it. Let's just, scorched earth. And Jean's like, no, there must be a better way, a more sensitive way, a way of preserving life and not just like obliterating an entire country. I don't know how you guys feel about Jean and Wolverine being together, not being together. How do you feel?
I think it works in the fact that it's like even in this depiction where they are together, but it still has a sense of like a doomed romance, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You can tell they're on shaky ground. Even at the start, the very, very start of this, where they're literally riding a sentinel together through Apocalypse.
What a great visual to start off.
Yeah.
I'm off, like we're off to the fucking races, riding on Sentinel, surfing. I love that.
It's how to make an entrance, yeah, for sure. But I mean, even then, there's still like disharmony between them. They're not. There's passages where they're not agreeing on the best course of action. So you can see, even though there is romance there, it's not something that you get like they delve into backstory, like he rescued her from the breeding pens, didn't he?
Yes.
And you think this might be a sense of, she's got more of a sense of gratitude and a sense of wanting to reward him maybe, rather than being desperately in love with him, which he is with her. You can tell with his inner monologue in this. So you do get that impression that I'm fine with it, because you get it shows that it's not built to last. They ain't going to ride off happily ever after into the sunset.
No,
she's not meant to be with him.
No, and that I think that's what works about it. And there are a lot of indicators that he really cares for her and he wants to be with her. But again, they're like Dave put in his wonderful synopsis, that they are kind of very different people with very different worldviews. And again, you can see that, and they have a psychic rapport like Cyclops and Jean have in the 616 universe, and the kind of it plays off on that. And even when he's kissing her, he's like, it doesn't feel like she wants to be with me or loves me, or that she believes in what I believe in, So yeah, I agree with that to a degree. What about you, Dave?
I actually really like this aspect of this book, probably more than anything else, because ultimately the whole thing is just a massive what if, isn't it? And you're taking the same characters and then saying, oh, what if this thing was different? But at their essence, they should be the characters. They should behave in a certain way, because part of it is how they're born, nature versus nurture. It's usually a combination of the two things. And you could be lured into thinking, oh well, if Jean hadn't met Scott beforehand, maybe something would have been there with Logan. And this explores that. So in this universe, I'm not sure if there's a bit of Stockholm syndrome sort of thing going on with Jean's side of the relationship. But yeah, it's just something not really right there. And you see, idealistically, they're just misaligned. So even if they've got, even if it is the apocalypse at the end of the day, even in that context, and they're together, and the world's going to end, they still can't actually make it work. So I actually really liked how that whole thing sort of played out, because I think I'd got into my head that maybe again, if the context was different, they could make a pair. But yeah, this story, I like how it just explores that, and I'm fully on board as to why it wouldn't work.
Yeah, I like that. I'm with you, and I think we are going to see more of Jean in another book. I think she turns up in Factor X, which is, is Cyclops running the breeding pens and Sinister's, kind of all these different siblings that are there, and twins and various things. So I think we'll get there eventually. But I think we see her again, and then we'll see her in, again, X-Men Omega, which is the very final issue of this saga. I will say, I did feel like we jumped about a lot in these issues. Like each issue has an objective, and then I feel like the end of the issue we're leading to another objective, but then by the time we get to that issue, it's a completely different objective. I feel like there's editorial mandates which are saying you need to do this by a certain point. This needs to happen in this book for us to get to X-Men Omega, for us to kind of resolve the story. So we need these things to happen. However you do them, they need to happen. But I do feel like, again, there's a lot of the artists and writers kind of like the idea, and it was kind of all up in the air, and they were kind of like scrambling to get all their work done and make sure it fits in line with the universe. But some writers and artists didn't really work like that, didn't like working like that, and I feel it here a little bit. Again, like there's a moment where Logan's got to go and find Jean because she's going to warn North America that they're going to get nuked by Eurasia. Again, going back to our musical reference from last time.
Never trusted them too. Never trusted them.
But then we get to that issue, and he's looking for Gateway. At Wundagore Mountain, which is the former base of the X-Men, Magneto's X-Men, which is where Wanda and Pietro were born, and where all the different random high evolutionary stuff happened. And Chthon, who's like a demonic evil presence, he was kind of birthed there as well and has links to the Scarlet Witch as well. But yeah, it was nice to see that. And again, we'll see, there is a prequel issue coming up where we'll kind of see how those X-Men were formed and what happened there. And we do see Wanda Maximoff's grave, so we know she's dead. And we will see much more of that in the future. But yeah, I did feel like we were kind of pulled around a little bit by the books. Again, I like the way that they just literally like we're going in guns blazing. This is, grabbing us by the balls and like pulling us along. I like that in every issue because I'm like, oh shit, right, we're off. Fuck, this is great. But I kind of also felt like what are we doing? Where are we doing? Where are we going? And also, like Gateway's an interesting character. He's from the kind of the Outback era of the X-Men that Chris Claremont wrote. Mark Silvestri did the art, and that's when they were hiding out in the Outback because they were believed to be dead. And that's where Donald Pierce and the Reavers kind of find them. Again, Donald Pierce held a grudge against Wolverine because he destroyed his cybernetic arm during the Dark Phoenix saga. So he's got this kind of real hatred hard-on for Wolverine. So And again, speaking of Wolverine and Deadpool, when he's on the X, being crucified on the X, is what Donald Pierce, who is the main villain in this, did to him in the main 616 universe. So it makes sense that he's kind of the baddie in this as well, given their history. But yeah, I kind of Gateway himself in the main universe, he's mute and he's out in the Outback and he just kind of randomly does stuff and teleports people places. But in this, he's like trying to absorb all of the media before the world dies, and he's not talking. But then I'm also like, why is he needed? They don't really explain why it's him that's needed to pilot this armada to attack Apocalypse and to deliver these
so
nukes.
He can teleport. He can teleport the armada, can't he?
But they're flying. They go from Paris and they fly, and then they get in there, and then he's forced to teleport them. So my question is, why didn't you teleport them from Paris to North America as opposed to right at the last minute? So, yeah, but then he's out there kind of riding the waves, kind of thing. He's like, I've got to experience it. So I kind of didn't understand why he was so important, and they didn't kind of, if it was to teleport, then I'd be like, yeah, well, that makes a whole lot of sense, but they don't do that until right at the very end of the final book.
Yeah. He's a very offbeat character. Like he's speaking different languages at different points. He's speaking English, then he's speaking German, then he's speaking I can't remember what else he's speaking. Yeah. And then he's like incredibly reluctant to do it anyway. And he's like, well, I don't want to do it, but I'll tell you what, I'll come with you, and you can talk me into it. How's about that? And then he doesn't really take that much persuading anyway. No. I don't know. I think he's there as a device, isn't he? I think.
Yeah.
Rather than a character in his own right, he's there purely to serve the plot. I think just get them across the Atlantic in an instant without being
through the
detected,
defenses.
blah, blah.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff. But again, it was the one thing I was like, they don't really quite explain why he's like, why is he so important, and why wouldn't you why wouldn't you recruit Gateway when you're at the seawall anyway? Why don't you go further in and get Gateway then, as opposed to breaking the seawall, doing the massive airlift with all the Sentinels, and then going back to London, and then coming back? Just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But again, it's a very minor thing. Another great visual I really liked was the Sentinel sticking out of Big Ben. I absolutely adored that. Yeah. That was amazing. Yeah.
And no one cared either. No one gave a fuck about it.
Not bothered.
But
then later we see Big Ben. It's been fixed. There's no Sentinel sticking out of it. So they must have been bothered a little bit because they fixed it. But yeah, I don't know what you guys think to the design of the Sentinels as well. I'm not keen on these Sentinels the way they look.
No, I think for me, you've got to have the classic kind of Sentinel look, haven't you? I didn't like it in the movies either. Days of Future Past, when they sort of play about with the design, and no, you've got to make them those big, almost Lego or Duplo type Sentinels. That's the classic thing, and there's no real reason for those to be different other than trying to be different, I guess.
Yeah, I think giving them a human face kind of takes something away from them as well, because they just look like blokes big blokes. They don't really look like a robot. Just looks like a guy with a big helmet on, And again, I think they're trying to kind of posit maybe that the Human High Council are the good guys in this scenario, but they're not the good guys because, again, they've hired... So Sinister's given... From X-Men Alpha, Sinister gave Jean and Wolverine some information. They provided it to the Human High Council, and they're using it now to kind of affect this attack against Apocalypse. But they say, and the Sentinel says, that they have a delayed termination. So the Human High Council is still going to kill them because they're mutants. And also, when all the humans are being transported over to Europe... they are scanning for mutants as well because they don't want any mutants. So they're saying, "Oh, we'll save all the humans, but you mutants, you stay where you are." You know, we don't take all immigrants and all refugees here in London by any chance. I think they end up in Bristol. I think they say, but yeah, very very odd kind of. And again, Braddock's trying to he's like, let's just fucking nuke them. So Brian Braddock, who's Captain Britain in the main universe, and Betsy Braddock, Psylocke's brother, he's just like, let's kill them all. You know, this kind of attitude, very very different version of Brian Braddock in the Human High Council. But yeah, it's very, again, the design of the Sentinels just not for me, that particular. And there's some great redesigns. I like Jean Grey's redesign, very simple and sleek and effective. Like the tattoo, the short hair, but yeah, the Sentinel one, not for me.
And for Emma Frost, they gave her clothes. I mean, there can't be that many alternate Emma Frosts that are so well covered.
Yeah, they kind of look a bit like the Hellfire Club outfit that the Human High Council wear is kind of reminiscent of the Hellfire Club's kind of the goons. But again, Emma's got this big scar, which is like saying she's had a lobotomy, that she's no longer a mutant because she's had her powers removed or chopped out of her brain. But yeah, what did you think of the Human High Council and their role in the story?
I really liked it, and I don't know if it's because obviously on the other podcasts we did Deer Hunter recently, and it was another story where you just see that war is just incredibly bleak, you know, and there are very few people who get an opportunity to be truly heroic. And I think for me, that's why Jean Grey stands out from this whole book. She is the only hero in this book. You see Logan, he sort of falls back, and without that positive influence of the X-Men and Charles Xavier, he's just fallen into being a soldier who does what he needs to do to get the job done. And the Human High Council are they're sort of on the good side, you know, because they're opposite to Apocalypse, but they're not heroic. They're willing to go to whatever means necessary to win as well. So again, I liked it because it didn't make it a simple goodies versus baddies story.
Yeah, I agree. It's like Shades of Grey, isn't it? You know, just that different morality.
See what he did there? Shades of Jean Grey.
Shades of Jean Grey. Well, like Dave just perfectly said, Jean is the only pure of heart person in this entire comic. Maybe Gateway, but I don't know. He's a bit of a simpleton, I think. But Jean is the only one who's, you know, pure noble. And when you consider what she's been through as well, being left in the breeding pens till it was liberated, you would think she of all people would have like, you know, a cruel streak and a black purpose, but she's the only one who doesn't. So I think that's really cool, the way they make her stand out. But I think if Wolverine was that way inclined as well, I don't think that would be consistent with Wolverine anyway. I mean, Wolverine has and always will be a good guy, but he still has that black heart inside of him, and you know, he's more than happy to kill people without batting an eyelid, you know, as and when needed. So I think it's good to keep her separate from him, keep her sort of unsullied, for want of a better word.
Yeah, I think the contrast is important, and I think it's necessary. And like Dave said, one of the best parts of the book is that again, and she decides to fly off and warn North America, and you get that, like we described, this Casablanca thing where Wolverine's like, I can't let you warn them about the incoming attack, and Jean's like, well, kill me then. You know, she flies off in this little biplane, it's like Spitfire or something she's flying off in, which is amazing. And then he goes to stab her in the throat, and they share a kiss, and then while he's still growing his hair back after being horrifically burnt, he's like, yeah, give me a lovely kiss with all this melted flesh and charred face. So yeah, but he doesn't. He goes to stab her, but he doesn't do it. So you know, much like he's done many a time in the comics, but in the films he seems to do it quite a bit. So yeah, no, I like that. I like that element. So yeah, speaking of the Human High Council, we've got Brian Braddock, Emma Frost, we've mentioned Bolivar Trask again, who was in X-Men Alpha, and Moira McTaggart, who's who's married to Trask as well. And we have Lady Mariko. Max, I know you're dying to talk about this Indiana Jones-esque moment with Lady Mariko and Wolverine or Weapon X. So please tell us about it.
Well, I mean, it's not explicitly referenced that they were romantically involved. I mean, they reminisce about the fact that last time he referred to her with such affectionate nickname, Maria, I think he calls her, or Marie or whatever. She was like, yes, back in the day when I was just a girl, just a teenager, and he's like, oh yes, I remember it well, or whatever he said.
Don't say oh yes like that, Max. Don't go oh yes, because it gives other connotations. But it's kind of like Marion Ravenwood in Indiana Jones. I was just a child. And you're like, how old is Indy again?
Exactly. It's like Roger Moore era James Bond, really, isn't it? Where all the Bond girls are 25, 30 years younger than him, especially towards the end when he was pushing 60. I mean, it is what it is, isn't it, really? I mean, there's no inference that he was, she was a very young teenager and he was on the edge of paedophilia and all that.
No, it's kind of, but it's vague enough, but it's also kind of quite specific at the same time. Like he jumps out the window when Dave's like, oh yeah, he's invincible, and he's flying down and burning up as he jumps on the airships and stuff. And he's like, oh, I let it slip out. Then I called her Mari. I haven't called her like that since years ago. And I'm like, oh. This is a bit weird, but yeah, I was kind of. This is, and again, speaking of creepy Wolverine, this was where I was like, I mean, it's a bleak world, but I don't want it to be quite that bleak. That's another level of bleakness I'm not quite ready for. But yeah,
I think the thing is though, I mean, when I go back and I watch some of the 80s and 90s movies, I am constantly surprised about how in your face that kind of age gap was played on like it was normal. I mean, we watched Trancers the other week, and then I watched Trancers 2. And fuck me, Tom Tomlinson was his name.
Tim Thomason.
Tim Thomason, that's it.
Yeah.
He's even older in the sequel, and he's got an even younger actress to play against, who's apparently like his ex-wife from the future, but they just happen to put her in the body of a hot early 20s actress, and it looks like a dad taking his daughter for a spin in the car or something, and it's horrendous. And I'm like, fucking hell, I think it was just rampant around this time in 95. So I don't think anyone would have read it at the time and thought anything of it. It's just us in 2025 looking back and being like, fucking hell, it's a bit wrong, isn't it?
Yeah, just a little bit. Anyway, speaking of other things, I thought I'd bring that up since the last time we talked about incest. I thought we might as well talk about some other weird sex stuff. We do get, I think we got a really cool introduction to Havoc in the very first issue, which was cool. Again, it was kind of mysterious. The Infinites are like, oh, we shouldn't tell Apocalypse because he might churn us into mush and stuff. Oh, what are we going to do? And he's like, well, we'll just call one guy in. And they're like, call this guy in. And there's all this smoke out the teleportation room. And then you get this big splash page of Havoc coming in. And then he's blasting them. And he talks about the past and how Cyclops wants to get his hands on Wolverine, which again, they explicitly say that Wolverine took Cyclops' eye. And again, Cyclops blew off Wolverine's hand. And that's why they're both missing those appendages. Or body parts, whatever you want to call them, which is nice. I
wondered though, if Wolverine's so invincible, why wouldn't his hand kind of grow back or something?
I think if you blow off all the flesh and all the connective tissue, like the bones are going to fly away, aren't they? Really, like they're not going to just stay there because there's nothing holding them together, is there? Like when you have a skeleton, they're not held together. So I see it like that. It just pulverizes it. Again, I'm sure the adamantium bones would survive, but they'd just be like flung across the room. That's how I would see it. But I understand where you're getting at.
Depends who the writer is, doesn't it? Because I think we've seen like Deadpool grow back from a cell or something. It just
Wolverine has done the same. Wolverine's done the same.
They'll make whatever they need to fit. I think there's probably some some tie back to Cyclops's optic blast or something like that. So powerful in that moment, it made it ungrowable. But ultimately, it's just a massive setup for that one splash page that comes out at the end, isn't it?
Love it, love it, love it. Yeah, the big reveal at the end. Wolverine has one of his arms damaged and cut up, and again absolutely torn. He's like, I can't do anything with this arm; it's useless. And they're like, oh, what? And then
again.
Donald Pierce is like, what are you going to do? You're going to stomp me to death. And then Wolverine again, that wonderful. Right at the end of the book, you've had 4 issues of him kind of struggling with the one arm and stuff, and then he's like, well, when the hand blew off, my claws were retracted, and then he goes, and then absolutely, guts Donald Pierce, which is a great splash page, great image, and that pretty much takes us out of the mini series as well. Awesome. Like every time Wolverine's in action, it looks absolutely amazing. I think these kind of big splash pages, big kind of action set piece stuff, any of those moments I loved.
His claws are massively longer as well, even out of his good arm, where you could say they look longer because they're coming out of a stump as opposed to his hand. But even on his good arm, when his claws are out, they look twice as long as your traditional length Wolverine claws. I guess it was just an artistic choice, I guess.
Yeah, this is what I always wondered. Yeah, it does. It's very extreme, very 90s, very like how big and long can we make these? But I always thought that about X-Men Wolverine, X-Men Origins, where like Deadpool is just having to walk around with and not bend his arms at all ever, like because he's got those big fucking swords up him. Like he's just gonna be walking around like this. Hello. How are you? Shaking hands like that, like I just like that. That's ridiculous. The claws here, I can give or take. I can leave. But we get a few other characters as well. Again, as cool as an introduction to Havoc as it is, he gets bitch slapped by a Sentinel. Like that's how he gets defeated. The Sentinel fires its hands at him, and he gets sent into the teleporter, and his body gets combined with the Sentinel hand, like a Jeff Goldblum fly situation. And Dark Beast is having to separate him, and I absolutely love. Yeah, with a bone saw.
Yeah.
And like Apocalypse is like, Dark Beast, is that a bone saw by any chance? And he's like, yes, High Lord Apocalypse. He's like, do what you have to do. He's just like, and we see Abyss, one of the horsemen. You see Holocaust, the son of Apocalypse, another one of the horsemen, and Cyclops is there, like clutching his injured eye, like, damn you, Wolverine, and he's complaining about a one-armed mutant. They're like, it's him, it's definitely him. I love how fucking despicable Apocalypse is in this. Like he's creating these cyborg kind of characters like Donald Pierce and the Pretty Boys and Vultura, as we'll get to as well. He's like, I threw a guy in here with another guy with an abnormally large head, and then for a laugh, I just threw in a gun. And it's just like, you're fucking horrible. You're disgusting. It's like, for a laugh, I'll throw in a gun as well and see what kind of cyborg monstrosity comes out of it. I'm just like, you are fucking horrific. You're a horrible, horrible person. But I love it. I love every minute. And again, we only get a couple of scenes with Apocalypse. But I'm like, yes, this world has to have a villain as despicable as Apocalypse in this. And yeah, just cruel, horrific, horrible, just absolutely mad as well. Which, yeah, I adored those little scenes. Again, just little snippets of stuff we'll see coming on in here as well. Speaking of other characters, we had... Who else did we have? We saw Magma from the New Mutants. She was... very briefly.
Yeah, she didn't last very long, did she?
About 3 panels, I think. She turns up and tries to kill Brian Braddock and the Human High Council, only to get immediately stabbed by Wolverine and get burnt. You guys very familiar with Magma as a character?
No, I'm not actually, no.
I am more so. I like that. Was it 82? The New Mutants came out, and then she sort of comes up in
Yeah, she's got a bit of a weird origin. She lives in like an ancient Roman...
Nova Roma.
Yeah, that's it, Nova Roma, that's it. And then Celine's in there, and she kind of gets introduced. If you played X-Men Legends, the original, she was the main character of that game, and she didn't have the weird origin, but she was kind of the lead, and you would use her as your main kind of character, I guess, the storyline.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, she's a good enough character. I think they used her in X-Men Evolution as well. I think she's made a few appearances as well. Who else do we have? Again, and we have speaking of Deadpool, we've got Copycat or Vanessa. She turns up very briefly, along with Madison Jeffries, aka Box or Box 2. You probably won't know Box very well. He's from Alpha Flight. I think I saw Max grinning then. I think he was going to make a dirty joke. I think he was going to say something about boxes, were you?
Wash your mouth out. No, I wasn't.
I saw that grin. I saw that grin. You were like, what could I say? What comment can I make? But yeah,
what's Box's special power then?
So there was another guy who was kind of like a paraplegic who could, the original Box, can't remember his name, but he could kind of morph metal into whatever he wanted. So he made a cyborg body that he would, help Alpha Flight with. But this one, he's a technological kind of telepath, so he can speak to machines and kind of a bit Forge-like, I think, kind of a similar power. But yeah, he's in league with Apocalypse, and so is Copycat. And then again, we get Donald Pierce and the Pretty Boys and Vultura as well. So yeah, a whole host of characters, considering it's just, again, these 4 issues.
Yeah, just going back to Magma. I mean, you're saying about that introduction is just bonkers. And if you remember, the X-Men were dead, at the time, or seemingly dead. And for a few issues, they just go and there's this whole subplot that goes, it's almost like Phantom Menace style storytelling in terms of the politics and everything. And you just think, there's no way you would get away with anything like that today, because everyone would be like, oh God, I've read this issue, it's ridiculous, and where is it going? And it's just a different time where you can just be creative and do bonkers shit. But yeah. I think I remember Magma most from, I think it might have been the 198, so it was not long after the No More Mutants stuff. And there was the whole macro event, but with her, she was like in a volcano with her partner who lost his powers like right in that moment. And it was really interesting how they played with, some of the consequences of the timing of losing your powers, if you had the ability to fly or whatever, and then no more mutants, plunge to your death. So, I think she's a decent character without being one of the core New Mutants. But, I do like her. I wasn't mad on the redesign that they did for her here. They sort of just made her really demonic looking, and again, just showed how Logan is indestructible in this universe.
I do like seeing Logan on fire, though. I think that's kind of a badass. That's kind of a very Terminator-esque moment, and that's why and I think maybe we could see it more in the films. I wouldn't mind seeing him just like walking towards somebody on fire. Again, I get what you mean about his invincibility. I feel the same way about Batman. He's far too invincible for my liking. But yeah, it's not a great redesign. It's just like, can we have a demonic Human Torch, please? And that's it. But yeah, the Copycat and Box don't look much different to what they would in the main 6-on-6 universe. Donald Pierce does. He looks very kind of demonic, with big kind of teeth and stretchy arms and claws and stuff. I liked his design because it's just so like it's a full representation of that kind of. It's weird as well because he's so racist in the 6-on-6 version of the universe. In this, he's like, but I'll work for Apocalypse because it means I won't die. I'll just become a weird cyborg. It's interesting that he's working with Apocalypse, but again, for his own kind of self-preservation. Not kind of the stereotypical version of that character, but I dug it, and I think it works. He works as an antagonist. He just keeps popping up. It's like, you think you killed me, I'm back.
Yeah. And he gets more and more weird looking as it goes on. Every time they have an encounter, and then he goes away, and then every time he comes back, he's more and more fucked up looking. Like he's like kind of, I don't know,
like the opposite of Wolverine. Yeah, like the opposite of Wolverine. He keeps coming back, but you see the damage. It's just like
yeah.
At
the time of their last confrontation, right at the end, before he gets shish kebabbed. He looks so fucked. He looks just like he looks like Jeff Goldblum at the end of The Fly, when he comes out of the machine, when he's accidentally fused with the machine, and he comes out, he's all like, kill me. Yeah. It looks kind of like that. It's so cool. I really like it.
Oh, there's some. I have to say, like Adam Kubert's just on fire in these issues. He's absolutely like. However you feel about 90s artwork, I think this is on the better side of those kind of extreme, visuals. But yeah, I absolutely love every time he's like, again, big splash page of him flying or diving or, attacking and slashing and stuff. Again, I think the motion and the timing and again, it's very hard to show motion in comics, but he really does do it. There's a section where he's in the snow and he's fighting that guy and he beheads him. And the panel after panel after panel, these kind of wide angle panels, absolutely gorgeous. And you feel the kind of, the heft of Wolverine, the weight of Wolverine, even though he's like throwing himself here and there and everywhere. It feels like, when he connects, like when he meets Carol Danvers or Warbird or Captain Marvel or Ms. Marvel, whatever you want to call her, Binary. She's got too many names. He dives at her, stabs her, and she flips out of the way and has this, pulls the guns on her. A lot of people forget that like Wolverine and Carol Danvers are very kind of interlinked. They worked in the CIA together before either of them were superheroes, and it's implied that they had a romantic relationship as well. So it's interesting to see her here in that without superpowers, looking very much like Angela from Spawn or Thor's sister, if you want to do modern continuity, with the kind of tassels and the tattoos or makeup. I think that was very Angela inspired for me anyway. But again, I think Dave mentioned in the chat, it was like, it's just very 90s, which I also agree with as well. But yeah, it was cool to see her she's in the Human Resistance League, I want to say, which is the American, I guess, Human High Council sort of thing going on. But I imagine they don't want to get themselves nuked. But
is it the Human Resistance League?
Maybe. Did you write? Was it
the Human League? The Resistance version of it.
The Human League. Oh my god! Keep referencing all these music
bit of Human
groups.
League, bit of Erasure.
Is this mandatory music and CD? Is this what this is turning into? Got you two on, and this is what's happening. You've got to do all the music references.
You're saying about the artwork with Donald Pierce, but it really leans into almost horror. I can almost hear the bones cracking as he's crawling towards Carol, and I think it was haunting. I just had to bring it back up there where she's sort of saying about how the grenade tore me apart, tore me and Pierce apart, but he infected me with whatever he's got, and he basically puts it on Logan to end it all. But I felt like as it got to the climax there, it almost became a horror book.
Yeah, I think so. I definitely the kind of body horror. You know me, I love a bit of fucking body horror. We've talked about The Fly
like
already.
Reanimator 2 or something.
Yeah, a little bit. Because you've got this other character called Vultura, which I think is an original character from what I understand, who is kind of a female vulture cyborg thing going on. And she gets killed by Wolverine, and then again, Donald Pierce blends Carol and Vultura together, and she's got like 4 arms, and kind of again more body horror, and her face is kind of coming apart and stuff. And Pierce merely does it just so he can get revenge on Wolverine and get to these ships in the Armada and stop them from delivering those nukes to North America. And again, another scene where Wolverine has to stab a woman. I don't know why he has to always stab women with his claws. It seems to be
Why is it always me?
Why is it always me having to stab women with my claws. Why? It seems to be a running theme for Wolverine having to stab women. I don't know if it's a good. I don't know if it's a kind of a fridging theme. I don't know if it's a good thing, but yeah, it just seems to keep happening. But again, I love that kind of. Again, he does, even though this is a bleaker Wolverine and kind of a crueler Wolverine as well, like we see that with Gateway, when he's trying to convince Gateway to lead this armada, he conjures up this VR experience of a young girl being murdered by one of the Infinites, being like massacred, which they have on recording because one of the humans is giving them a recording of something he witnessed. And he also develops this or brings up a diary of this little girl that he's just seen murdered, and he's like, don't do it for me, don't do it for the Human High Council, do it for this little girl who'll never see Seven, you know. And I'm like, and even get like Gateway and Brian Braddock, and Brian Braddock is like, I want to literally nuke all of North America, but you're cruel, Wolverine, you're really cruel. Like, and he's like, yeah, well, fuck it, you know. And I also love that scene where he's like, Emma Frost goes, you know, you're coming to North America just to find your little lady love, to find Jean and save her and stuff. And he goes, actually, no, I believe in this mission. I believe what we're doing is right, and I'm actually bringing the nukes to the one person in this world I love. So fuck you, Emma Frost. Fuck you. That's a great moment as well. Some real good like character work for Logan, this version of Logan, and to get across that he is not quite similar, like we said, but not quite as golden-hearted or pure-hearted, you know, as the one we know. That he will, you know, he'll do what needs to be done, what is necessary, which again is a very Wolverine thing, but it goes to a whole nother level, which is like mass genocide, really, we're talking about, really, with all these nuclear bombs heading over to North America. But yeah, I thought that was some nice, again, just character work. Again, it not even like 2 pages, but it really tells you a lot. Again, like talking about the world building and the economic, you know, page space and things like that. I think they're managing to say and do a lot. And again, only in these 4 issues.
Yeah, they cover a lot of ground. They really they cram a lot in. There's no pauses for breath, really, is there? There's so much in those 4, you know, it really does go from A to B to C to D very, very quickly. I mean, one thing that did tickle me a bit was this, it's sort of like the typical American notion that Britain is like 1 square mile big. But, you know, where it goes
just around Big Ben.
Yeah.
This,
the House of Parliament.
Yeah, well, that's where they are, where they get attacked. And then he goes, oh shit, the Psylink, Jean's about to take off. I better get there quick just to like stop her. And she's taken off from Cornwall. It specifically says Cornwall. Cornwall is about a 4.5 hour drive from fucking London, right? And he still gets there on his little bike to stop just as she's about to take off. It's bonkers, you know. But I suppose,
and like I said, they're in Bristol as well. So they go from the seawall. They go back to London. Yeah. They go to Bristol, where the airlift has happened. Then he runs back, and then he's in North America so where's Wundagore? That's kind of Carpathian Mountains, I think, or somewhere. I can't remember where exactly, but
somewhere in Europe, isn't it?
Yeah, somewhere in Europe, and then he's in America again, or heading to North America from London. So he's he must be fucking exhausted. I don't care if you've got healing factor. Like, traveling that much must fucking like wear you out. You know, but
surviving on little chef food, he'd have no chance. Bizarre,
yeah. I mean, he is a little chef, I guess. You could, you know, short guy. Like it's just, it just. And again, I think that's one of the things that kind of like jolts me around, because I feel like we're just being pulled from pillar to post a little bit with like, oh, this is his mission now. This is his mission now. Like again, in the first one, it's, you know, breach of the seawall, destroy the control center. Second one's protect the Armada guidance system, because Pierce is trying to destroy that, and that will affect, their plan. Third is, you think he's looking for Jean, but he's actually recruiting Gateway. And then the 4th issue, it's ensure that the Armada reaches its destination. So again, it just seems like
Like
and again,
4 levels of a computer game almost.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you've got to complete that level. It reminds me kind of like Metal Gear Solid. Like one of those maps. You'd have these massive maps they design, and you're making progress, and you move along in the map, and then they go, "Oh, you can't get back through this door. You're gonna have to go all the way back to the beginning of the game and go through a different door to get in." It's one of those where I'm like, "Oh, okay, right, I guess so." Going back. Do this, so yeah, it kind of felt a bit like that. And again, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a very small nitpick, really, for me. But I just felt a bit like, just not really sure where I stood. But I enjoyed the ride, and again, hell for leather ride, very extreme. Excellent kind of artwork, and you're just again pulled along and just have to kind of experience it for what it is.
It's good fun, isn't it? At the end of the day,
yeah. Absolutely.
It's not massively heavy going. It's action. It's an action movie in a 4-issue arc. Really, it doesn't ask you a lot.
This is definitely like a Rambo, or one of the Jean-Claude Van Damme films. You're not in it for the little moments, even though there are some great emotional kind of set pieces and ideas and stuff. You're here to see Wolverine stab a lot of guys and cut them in half, and rend cyborgs into various different pieces. Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
possibly should have been Lethal Weapon then.
Oh, he is Lethal Weapon X. Lethal Weapon X. Yeah, absolutely. And we also see Apocalypse learn of Sinister's betrayal as well, because he is given the plans and I think it's the vulnerability within the seawall, so Logan can deliver those, the Sentinels and let the airlift happen. But Sinister, Cyclops is like, I'm gonna get Daddy for you, Apocalypse. I'm gonna get him. And he's like, don't worry, I've got plans. I've got ideas. I'm working on stuff. So yeah. Well, again, we'll see. They're setting things up. There's wheels turning that we're going to see in the future.
It's all quite Star Wars, really, isn't it? The escaped plans, and Apocalypse is almost Palpatine, isn't he? Where he's always thinking 5 to 10 steps ahead of everyone else. So rather than other leaders and stuff that you see in fictional or fiction. They might go mad, might lose their temper or whatever. He's like, yeah, it's okay. There's a probability that this would happen. It's all right. Cool yourself, Cyclops.
Cool it, bro. And then he's like, again, I like that moment where he's like, oh, Wolverine, you cut my eye out. I'll get my revenge. I love that moment. I love Abyss and Holocaust just kind of putting a dig on Cyclops, and he's like, "Oh, I wonder what mutant he's talking about." And he's like, "You know which mutant he's talking about? He's talking about Wolverine. He's the one that took his eye." And he's like, "Yeah, I know, my eye."
with his Fabio style flowing laughs.
Yeah, I kind of love it. I kind of love his redesign, to be honest. I kind of dig it as redesigns go. I think it's a little bit, because he is now a literal Cyclops, isn't he? So which I like. I'm interested to see where. Again, I've read this before, but I'm interested to see where he ends up in the storyline, that has how that kind of falls out as well. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. We'll get to kind of Factor X and that, basically the only book about the baddies really that we have really. But again, like we said, there's no real heroes in this. There's no real good guys necessarily in this whole thing. Even Magneto and the X-Men have done some dodgy shit, and they're kind of, some of them are quite dodgy people, as we see here with Wolverine. Jean Grey is the heart again of the X-Men, that kind of mothering, maternal energy, that empathetic, which is part of her power set as well. So yeah, it's nice to see her in that kind of role. But yeah, is there anything else we want to talk about in regards to the story or what occurs or anything like that?
Yeah, I suppose the only thing for me is I would like them to run into non-X-Men centric characters. Because this is a world. That's why I liked Carol Danvers being in it. I know she has the binary thing, and she's obviously connected with a history with Mystique and Rogue and what have you, but you don't think of Carol Danvers as being massively X-Men centric, in the majority of her stuff. So I like the fact that I really like the fact that she appears in it and plays a part, but then you wonder if this is the main Marvel universe. This happened, but where's Steve Rogers, where's Tony Stark, etc., 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 just to make it that bit bigger, because it's all self-contained with only X-Men based characters.
For now, Max, for now. We will see. We will see. Well, we're just going to have to see what comes up next. Well, we know what's coming next, but we'll get to that. But yeah, there is even a specific book that's coming towards the end which focuses on non-X-Men characters. So you will get your moment to have those. And again, this is an X-Men event, so it is about the X-Men specifically. They're the main focal point. Yeah. But you will see. But I think what you're seeing is because the focal point of the problem is mutants, and the main kind of antagonists or heroes of that are mutants as well, and they came to the forefront maybe. And again, like Apocalypse is all about the survival of the strongest. The strongest will survive. So he's probably orchestrated things that the mutants would rise and would take prominence over other superheroic characters. So I think that's probably why there's less focus on them. I think as well they weren't selling particularly well at this point. Avengers, Fantastic Four, Hulk. This is just prior to the Onslaught event, which would end with them going into a pocket universe and then being written by the Image Comics guys and drawn by the Image Comics guys to try and get a bit of popularity back. But didn't quite work. But that's another story for another time, certainly.
This is where the X-Men are the proper rock stars of the comic world, aren't they? It's huge. So you almost don't need the other heroes at this point.
No. Again,
that's what made X-Men 97 so amazing to me, was that it was an X-Men story, but occasionally you'd see the bigger impact where you'd cut to the tiny little a throwaway scene with Daredevil on the street, or Black Panther in Wakanda for 2 seconds, but it made the world bigger and made showed the stakes across the whole Earth. So I like that kind of thing.
Also, Max, you got to remember that this is like North America littered with skulls, like Terminator, Judgment Day. It's just a lot of dead fucking people. So I imagine you've got some characters in there are just fucking dead. They're just gone.
Fair enough.
You're never going to see them again. Sorry, Max. This is not the universe where these things can occur. These characters can be all happy and getting on with their own thing. But you will see them. I promise. There are existing Marvel characters outside the X-Men kind of set and outside the X-Men universe. You will see them, but again, not today. Another thing I wanted to bring up was the Brian Braddock betrayal. What did you think to that whole subplot thing?
It's pretty cool. He's been given like a cerebral implant, hasn't he? That's kind of turned his moral compass, but then at the end, he kind of overrides it, doesn't he? Somehow.
Yeah. He's kind of got like a hard-on to kill everybody in North America. Yeah. It's his idea to nuke everything and kill everybody there, once they've got the humans out, And technically, depending on who's writing him, Brian Braddock is a mutant in some aspects, but then he's not. Depending on what's fueling his powers at that time and where it comes from, he could be considered a mutant. I think it was at the time. So maybe this is before or prior, or maybe he's got a different dad or a different mum or something. I'm not sure, but it's interesting to see that he's like, we've got to kill, and then right at the end he goes, oh, I'm going to betray everybody, and then he goes, no, I'm not. I'm fighting back, and then dies immediately. And again, you've got all the human council all the way through it going, oh, I don't trust him. And then it's like...
Because he makes the Sentinels, doesn't he? That's the thing.
So Trask designs the Sentinels, but Brian Braddock Industries, or whatever you want to call it, is making them. Like, I think usually it's like Sebastian Shaw or somebody, Shaw Industries or something. But yeah, in this one, it's Brian Braddock. Shit design, though, Brian and Trask. Do a better design of your Sentinels. They look rubbish. Get them smashed. Get them fucking smashed. Again, the colours aren't even very good on those Sentinels. I'm sorry, I just really don't like that design.
Yeah. I kind of feel that a lot of the characters, basically Jean and Logan, you can see that the essence of the characters is the same, but like I say, the world around them is different. I think with most of the other characters, they just took huge liberties, and they're whatever they needed to be in the story. So I think for the story, it was okay to have the whole thing is about what is actually right or wrong in war. And it's very, very grey, as going back to what we said before. So I think Brian's switch was just playing into that, but I don't think there was a tremendous amount taken from Brian Braddock from the comics to make you think that he'd switch like that. Or
I mean, he's known for being quite moody and quite aggressive and angry, and he's killed people. I think he killed Slaymaster in one of the Alan Moore comics. I think because he took out Betsy Braddock's eyes. He pulled out her eyes. So he was like, well, I'm going to fucking murder you now. You don't blind my sister. And that leads on to the Mojo stuff, and she gets the cybernetic eyes and then joins the X-Men, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I think I felt like they were kind of like too heavy on it being him. They were like, it's definitely him. He's going to betray us. And then he does betray them, but then he goes, no, I can fight it now. I can fight it. And it's like, I think it would have been more interesting if, it felt like, I don't know, maybe they were trying to subvert it where it's like a red herring, like he's the big red herring, and then it would be somebody else, like Emma Frost or Mariko or somebody else. But I just felt like it was just a bit too obvious, and then it kind of just got kind of thrown out at the last minute, like, oh, look, Brian's doing something. Oh, and I'm dead. Doesn't matter, I'm dead. It's
completely telegraphed, isn't it?
Yeah. And again, I was like, it would be more interesting if it was like Emma Frost and she had some kind of idea, like maybe she'd get her mutant powers back if she, betrayed them to Apocalypse or something, maybe promised her something, or if it was Lady Mariko who, like, maybe secretly hates mutants anyway, or wants Japan to, do better or something. I don't know what the situation is in Japan, but yeah, I don't know. But I think there was maybe a better, more interesting way. But again, I think there's so much going on. They'd kind of just that was the one subplot they maybe didn't need. But by the time they got to the finale of it, they were like, we've got 1 page to resolve it. Let's just very quickly throw it out. Oh, he betrayed us. No, he's back. No, he's a hero. Oh, he's dead. Bah. But yeah, that was the one thing. Another thing I was like, doesn't really do much for me personally. But
I wonder if if you think about the level of coordination to make this event happen, and it's not like you've got all these stuff. You can put all the high level storylines into Google Docs and then share it with everyone. There must have been a lot of communication back and forth.
Oh yeah.
So from that editorial perspective, you kind of where all the chess pieces are going to be, and then the writers have to go and. You're always going to get a bit of a casualty, and probably Brian's turn, maybe he just got so far into the book and then realised, oh shit, I got to wrap this up now.
Again, yeah, I think you're right. Like I was saying about the missions and the objectives on each issue, I think again they're trying to do an entertaining story while still get those points across. Again, put the chess pieces, as you say, in place, and sometimes it doesn't always quite work. Again, still entertaining comics, still comics I enjoyed, but yeah, just certain things. Again, very much a nitpick from me, just very much a nitpick, but it's just something I was like, could have been better, could have been different, could have been framed differently. I think there was enough going on that you didn't need it as well. I think, unless you were going to do something with it. I thought it was, could have been more interesting or more rich in some form. I don't know.
His dying words are pretty good, though. As he's pegging out, he says, I tried my best, but in the end, I was only human.
When you said pegging out, I thought you were going to talk about something else.
Well, he was in a very intimate embrace with Emma Frost as he was expiring, so I suppose if you're going to get it in, get it in.
I mean, if anybody wants to do that to me, I think Emma Frost would be okay. I think I'd allow that.
Wasn't I'm Only Human a Human League song?
It was indeed, yes. It was indeed. Absolute banger.
Yes.
Now I'm going to read that as he's singing it.
Stroking the side of her face that's got the lobotomy on it. Yeah, just like, oh yeah, let me touch that scar.
Jesus.
That's what I'm into, lobotomy scars.
Yeah.
This conversation's taken a dark twist.
Right. Any other things we wanna talk about before we finish up for Weapon X?
I daren't, for fear of where it may lead.
Same here. I think I'm just I'm intentionally staying away from, reading around what the other miniseries are, and just trying to stay on target and follow along as we discuss it, and not get clouded by other stuff that's going on and other events.
Yeah. I'm kind of doing the same. I kind of don't want to look too far ahead or remind myself of anything. I want it to come fresh and as a surprise. Again, I've read it before, so I can kind of half remember a lot of the stuff to a degree. But yeah, I'm trying to kind of stick and not go online and Google things. I did look up. I sent it to you guys. I looked up. I was looking at Weapon X when I should have been working, of course. And I found a Toy Biz used to do the original Marvel Legends before Hasbro, and I found that there was a Weapon X figure, and there was a variant that they made which has the claws coming out of the stump, but also has the burnt face. Has its horrible burnt face, and I was like, who thought, you know what? I want the variant with Wolverine with a burnt face.
Yeah,
looks more like Deadpool than anything else. But I just found that entertaining. Again,
it was very cool. Some poor kid as well probably said, "Oh, Mum, I really want a Wolverine figure for my birthday or for Christmas." And she went, "There you go, son. Nice fucking burnt Freddy Krueger face. Wolverine for you.
This
Enjoy."
one was going cheap. He was in the bargain bin. I thought I'd pick him up for you. It says Wolverine. It says Weapon X. He's your favourite,
exactly.
Right?
He's got one arm, one hand, I should say, and no face. Enjoy, son.
It doesn't look like Wolverine at all. He's just got the claws out. He's from a different universe. It's wrong. It's not the right one. I remember when I got like X-Men figures back in the day, and I love that era of kind of X-Men figures and stuff. And I think I got the Wolverine I always wanted the Wolverine in the classic yellow and blue, but I got a Wolverine in yellow and blue, but it's like the Jim Lee kind of general kind of X-Men outfit when they're in kind of late 1989 when they go into space and meet Charles Xavier again when he's in the Shi'ar suit and stuff, which again is fine. I didn't hate it. And then I got a Weapon X, kind of had the Weapon X gear on as well. But yeah, and then I had that very weird bike, toy bike that has Wolverine's own face on it. It's so fucking weird. I think I might have shared it before, but it's such a weird fucking toy. It's got claws that come out and it's got Wolverine's own face on it. It's fucking weird, so weird. I'll send you a picture, or you know what, actually I'll put the image here. So I've learned on this system I can now put images up. So what I'm going to do on this edit, I'm going to put up some of the kind of screen grabs of the images that we've talked about, and some of the stuff I'll throw on there as well. So if you're watching the video version, you'll get a wonderful little bit of visual kind of interplay with that, so you can get to see some of the issues. So we'll do that, and then on my audio version, I'll do a little intro, a little stinger, and then Dave on the Comics in Motion can play around and do whatever he does best with his version. But as we come to a close, the patrons have already decided our entire run of comics now. So we know there's 12. We're going to do 12 podcasts. This is number 2. And they've decided the in-betweeny ones. So I think it's 2 to 9, I want to say, which is all the different miniseries you can read out of order. So they've decided that Dave's looking forward to this one, I know, because we're going into the Shi'ar Galaxy. We're going to do... We've gone from this very grounded, European-centric, escaping and nuking of North America, but we're going into the Shi'ar Galaxy, and we're going to follow Gambit and the Externals, which replace the X-Force title, which Gambit was not in X-Force at this point, so not sure why they chose it to do this, but they have. And I believe they need to find a shard of the M'Kron crystal in order to revert the timeline back to the original 616. So Jubilee, Strong Guy, Sunspot, and a few other characters are going to join them. I think Richter's in there maybe as well. So yeah, kind of a hyperspace heist, if you will. We're going to see what that turns out like. And so Dave's going to see all of his favourite characters all over again. We hopefully will get a little appearance from Magneto as well, I believe. So because most of the issues, I think, most of the miniseries start out with Magneto giving them their missions, I believe. So apart from this one where Wolverine and Weapon X and Jean Grey were not really part of the X-Men in this iteration and this team. We'll definitely see that. But yes, so I'm really enjoying this, guys. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I'm glad that I'm putting the stereotype that 90s comics sucked to bed, because it's not true. It's not true. There's some good shit here, and we've enjoyed this, and I'm sure we're going to continue delving into the next chapter of the Page of Apocalypse. So join us next time.